Hello, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to be checking out how Sweden and Finland crushed Russia's plan for an empire, right? But this is the first time I'm going to be checking this out. I clearly have no idea or whatsoever, but we're going to be doing this together. Feel free to drop your thoughts on the comment section. Let's check this.
2 years after Finland and Sweden joined NATO, their impact on the alliance is undeniable. What began as a strategic reaction to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has evolved into one of the most significant transformations of NATO's northern posture in decades. These two Nordic nations haven't just added more flags to the table, they've brought territory, capability, and clarity. NATO's European center of gravity has shifted north, and for Vladimir Putin's Russia, that is a big problem. Geographically, their accession changes everything. Finland instantly doubled NATO's border with Russia, adding over 1,300 kilometers of frontier along the Karelian woods to the Arctic tundra up north. Sweden, with its long coastline and island-rich waters, has effectively turned the Baltic Sea into a NATO-controlled lake. Russian naval access to the Baltic is now a narrow and vulnerable corridor. As a result, any Russian ambitions west of St. Petersburg now face a layered, interconnected Nordic and Baltic defense zone, which stretches from the Norwegian Sea to the Gulf of Finland. While Russia may like to say that this was a complete unprovoked surprise, Finland and Sweden joining NATO wasn't a cold start. Both nations came prepared.
Yeah, they came
Finland
prepared.
and Sweden had spent years participating in NATO exercises, aligning their doctrines with their Nordic and Baltic neighbors, and deploying forces to the alliance's eastern flank. When they joined formally, integration was fast and meaningful. Now they're not just training alongside NATO forces, they are NATO forces. They've signed defense cooperation agreements with several NATO members, allowing troops and equipment to be stationed in their territory, particularly above the Arctic Circle. That's not symbolic, it's strategic.
Yeah.
As we discussed in our last episode on Greenland, the Arctic is becoming a contested region, and the Nordic edge is now a front line. Finland, and in particular Sweden, also brings substantial industrial muscle. Sweden's defense industry is among the most advanced in Europe. Saab, among other things, produces Gripen fighter jets, long-range missiles, radar systems, and advanced air defenses. Bofors remains a world leader in artillery and munitions, and Kockums builds the stealthy Gotland-class submarines and Visby corvettes. In 2024, Swedish defense exports hit €3 billion. Finland doesn't have a single mega company like Saab, but it does have a highly capable network of firms. Patria builds armored vehicles now in service across Europe. Saco and Lapua produce precision rifles and ammunition trusted by elite forces worldwide. Nammo, a joint Finnish-Norwegian firm, supplies NATO with a big chunk of its artillery shells and rocket motors. In 2024, Finland exported roughly half of its €2 billion defense production. Combined, the Finnish-Swedish defense industries give NATO more than just tools. They provide supply chain resilience and cold weather specialization,
Wow.
and arguably an ingenuity which only long-standing neutrality has forced into Sweden and Finland's industrial mindset. On the civil defense front, both countries are far ahead of most other NATO members. Sweden began rebuilding its total defense system after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. Finland, however, never dismantled it to begin with, and the result is one of the most advanced civil defense frameworks in the Western world. By law, Finnish buildings over a certain size must include fortified bomb shelters. In Helsinki alone, there's underground shelter space for over 900,000 people, more than the city's entire population. Many of these bunkers are not just concrete rooms, but fully equipped facilities with filtered air, sanitation systems, food and water storage, and even recreational spaces. Beneath sports arenas, swimming pools, parking garages, and metro stations, the infrastructure exists to shield civilians from chemical, biological, and even nuclear threats. But it doesn't stop at shelters. Finland maintains an extensive national stockpile system, secure warehouses located across the country containing medical supplies, fuel, grain, and essential equipment like firearms, ammunition, and resources to keep a fight going for years if need be. These are regularly rotated and replenished.
I literally admire that about the Finns because I feel like they have the well-being of the citizen at heart, right? Preparing a place whereby there is an outbreak of war, they can literally pack the locals there, you know. So I feel like they have the well-being of the citizen at heart, and it makes sense. Like, makes sense.
Ready to support the population and military during a crisis or blockade. And it's not just infrastructure, it's culture. Conscription remains in force, with widespread reserve training and population-wide knowledge of emergency protocols. When NATO talks about societal resilience, Finland is the blueprint. Sweden, while not as prepared as it used to be in the heyday of the Cold War, is
Mm,
quickly catching
that's
up
a
to
lot.
Finland. During the Cold War, it built over 60,000 shelters, enough to protect over 70% of its population. Many of these fell into disuse after the 1990s, but in the past few years, the Swedish government has launched a major refurbishment program. Older bunkers are being inspected, restored, and reconnected to modern civil defense plans. The government has also reintroduced military-civilian planning across municipalities, requiring local authorities to prepare for wartime scenarios, cyber disruption, and long-term supply shocks. Sweden's approach is once again rooted in the concept of total defense, where every part of society, from local police to the post office, plays a role in national survival. The last time Sweden was on this footing, it could activate 1 million trained men in less than 2 weeks. Importantly,
Wow.
both nations have shown they're not just reactive, they act. In late 2024, Finland intercepted the Russian-linked vessel Eagle S after it damaged undersea power and telecom cables between Finland and Estonia.
Yo.
Special forces boarded the ship by helicopter, detaining the crew. Finnish officials later said the vessel appeared to be planning to cut more cables. In Sweden, the government has stepped up naval patrols and crisis response drills after suspected sabotage of underwater infrastructure. As Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson put it bluntly, we don't believe random things suddenly happen quite often. These aren't symbolic statements, they're signals. The Nordics are done waiting for threats to escalate. All this backs up what we explored in our earlier video about how invading the Nordics would be a strategic disaster. And now that both countries are NATO members, the military cost for any aggressor has only increased. Together, Finland and Sweden bring substantial hard power to the alliance. Finland's small standing force of 24,000 can scale up to 280,000 through well-trained reservists, and a total of around 1 million during wartime. Sweden adds over 24,000 professionals, with 33,000 more in reserve, and an even larger pool of home guards being once again regenerated. On land, the two field over 220 modern tanks and hundreds of CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles and various Patria vehicles. Finland has Europe's largest artillery arsenal, with towed howitzers, K9 Thunders, and multiple rocket systems. Sweden's Archer artillery system adds mobility and precision to that mix, and it is only increasing its operational units. In the air, Finland is transitioning from FA-18s to F-35s, while Sweden operates around 100 Gripens, with more of the newer E model on the way. In the naval domain, Sweden deploys stealth-capable submarines, corvettes like the Visby class, and high-speed combat craft built for archipelagic warfare. Finland's navy is smaller but focused, with missile boats and fast patrol vessels backed by a highly capable coast guard which, as mentioned earlier, is not afraid to confront the Russian Navy and Shadow Fleet. Still, no defense or situation is perfect. Finland's long border includes remote terrain and vulnerable channel islands
That's
in the
nice.
Gulf of Finland, areas that could be exploited by hybrid operations or covert incursions. Sweden's exposure is different. It's increasingly digital and infrastructural. The country's vast undersea cable network, energy grid, and maritime traffic routes are attractive targets for sabotage. In the last 15 months alone, at least 11 cables have been damaged across the Baltic Sea. The Swedish Defense Ministry has confirmed that many of these incidents have been deliberate. While both nations have increased naval patrols and launched undersea monitoring programs, including joint efforts with NATO under Baltic Sentry, these remain pressure points. Other challenges remain as well. Both countries maintain relatively small full-time militaries, meaning fewer senior officers and limited capacity to fill NATO leadership positions. Their force projection capability, designed primarily for national defense, will need to grow if they are going to contribute to missions beyond their own backyard. The bottom line is simple. Finland and Sweden have reshaped NATO's northern flank. They've added not just territory, but deep capability. They've brought world-class defense manufacturing, elite winter warfare troops, Arctic experience only matched by Norway, and the political will to act when challenged. Vulnerabilities remain, but so does momentum, and the direction is clear. As Sweden's Defense Minister Paul Jonsson recently said, "We are not entering NATO with illusions, we are entering it with responsibility." For NATO, that responsibility is welcome. And with Finland and Sweden now fully inside the tent, the alliance is stronger, smarter, and better prepared for whatever comes next. For their once fairly geographically isolated neighbor, Norway, both countries bring with it an entirely new equation. While the narrow strip of land border with Russia used to be key for Norway, they can now depend on hard backing from both Finland and Sweden if things were to escalate, meaning that Norway can go back
Wow.
to focusing on its navy, amphibious contingent, and air force rather than its land army to such a great extent. We just dropped a post over in the community tab where you get to help influence an upcoming episode for August. Go cast your vote or suggest your own idea. As always, thanks for watching.
This was so nice. So I feel like Sweden and Finland coming together um is actually a good one, right? And I'm sure you guys will agree to that. It's actually a good force, right? So imagine coming together and crushing Russians' plan. It makes sense, like it makes sense, and I love the unity between the two countries as well. What do you think? Let me know on the comment section, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around with me. I will see you in my next one.